Hey everyone, Professor Snart, Friday morning, just checking in as we get into the second half of Unit 8, which is the second half of our second essay, which is of course a revision of the first. So for the first part of the unit, or the 8A part of the unit, you were doing a fairly simple step, but one that obviously you want to make sure is correct before proceeding to the next, which is just finding your secondary source, which is part of what you're now working on in terms of the revision to essay number 1. In addition to correcting mistakes and that kind of thing, your main task is to incorporate that secondary source into your argument. So again, assuming that you found a correct source and you would have posted that to the discussion board, got some feedback. If it was inappropriate or incorrect, I would have flagged it. So everyone should be good to go if you did the discussion board assignment. As far as finding a source, now the challenge is, of course, integrating it. And so remember, this doesn't mean just tacking on a secondary source quotation at the end of a body paragraph somewhere, or just sort of throwing in a quote here or there randomly, but really trying to weave it throughout your essay. So you really want to think of it in terms of a revision or re-seeing of the essay, not just an addition of a sentence or two here or there, like at the end of the body paragraphs or something like that. So I'm just going to click myself into Unit 8b, which is where we're at now. So again, there's stuff about, integrating your source, some MLA kind of reminders. It's all pretty much stuff that we've covered to this point in the class. Reminders about integrating your source, and then really just submitting essay number 2. And just a quick reminder to make sure that you submit as a different file name, just so there's no confusion about which file is which. Even if, as most people would do, they might work from that original document, or at least the document I sent back. And also be careful, like I've mentioned before, that you have the document that I've sent back from the first essay, you've looked through it, and you might be actually working from that one as the starting place for your revision. So make sure that you don't commit the same mistakes that I've already marked from that first essay, and if you're using that same document, just be careful to get rid of any additional comments like highlighting stuff in square brackets, whatever I might have thrown in there, so that they don't show up in that final paper that you submit. Again, working from that document is perfectly fine and probably a good idea for many people, but you do have to be careful that you get rid of all that extra commentary stuff that I've added in there. So relatively straightforward as far as the work that we're doing for this unit, just focused on integrating that source and working through maybe edits or revisions depending on how well your first essay came out. As far as a due date, then, we're looking again at our Thursday. So our next Thursday is March 22nd. So be sure that you have that kind of marked as the very latest that you want to finish this, and don't leave it till the end. That is, I think people know already, really, that procrastination and time management is really the worst, or has the most detrimental effect, especially when it comes to online work where you don't have that constant contact with me, being in a classroom, kind of keeping you on task. It really is, a lot of it is self-motivated. And so I think people, even if we sort of know that, it really hits people in a much more practical way now that we're about halfway through our course, a little bit more. And if you've been waiting till the last minute and things really aren't going so well and things get busy in other areas of your life, it starts to pile up. So now is a good time for me to provide my reminder that just basic time management skills can really go a long way to improving how you do in a course where you might feel like it's the work that's holding you back, or you don't quite get things, or whatever's going on. But it could be just something as simple as basic time management. So if things aren't going as smoothly as you want them to or you'd hoped, now might be a good time to really assess how you're managing your time, and can you budget time earlier in the week, before that due date is right around the corner. And again, it sort of goes without saying, but it's funny how we know these things but don't put them into practice. Is that if you just decide, well, I'll do my online work when I have the time, or when I get all these other things done, we all know that there's always the next another thing to do. And so you really do have to budget time, just like as if you were going to a class that started at a particular time and ended at a particular time. You have to budget that as part of your day. Even if you don't always know exactly what you'll be doing during that hour or hour and a half or whatever you want to make it, just say that's going to be my online work time. And don't make it the day of, obviously. Make it a couple of days, before the due date. So you really are consciously setting aside time to force yourself to sit down and do the work at hand. Again, we probably all know this, but now's a good time to make sure you're actually doing it, which is a whole nother story, isn't it? Okay, so especially as we get into submitting the second essay, be sure you get in touch with me with any questions. If you want to double check your source, questions about works cited stuff now that you're now adding this entry to your works cited, so you'll obviously have the primary text still, but now this database source as well. So that might introduce some questions for you. In-text citation then is a little bit different depending on what kind of source you found. So again, any questions like that, there's lots of resources in the course, but also be in touch with me with questions if you have any. And I will talk to everybody in a couple days.